Welcome to AfriVlog Updates, where we dive deep into political events shaping Africa and its place in the global power game. Today, we are reacting to a high-stakes diplomatic meeting between South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and then US President Donald Trump, as covered by DW News. This visit wasn't just ceremonial, it came at a time of political turbulence, racial tensions, and misinformation. We are going to unpack what was discussed, what Ramaphosa presented, and of course, that tweet by Trump claiming white South Africans were being murdered in a land grab genocide. Let's break it all down. Please stay with us to the last clip. We recognize and respect any creator whose work has featured here. In case of any question, please feel free to reach us out through our email, afrivlogupdates@gmail.com. Here's President Ramaphosa arriving at the White House during the 2018 UN General Assembly in New York. This was his first major engagement with President Trump after taking over from Jacob Zuma. Back home, Ramaphosa was facing enormous pressure, an economy on the edge, high unemployment, and deep inequality tied to unresolved land ownership issues dating back to apartheid. Abroad, he was trying to restore investor confidence. So, what did Ramaphosa and Trump actually discuss? Here's the key agenda. Ramaphosa pitched South Africa as a stable investment hub in Africa. He emphasized infrastructure, agriculture, and energy as key sectors for American investors. This was the most controversial topic. Trump had tweeted just weeks before this meeting that he had asked his Secretary of State to closely study the South African land and farm seizures and expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers. This tweet was based on disinformation pushed by white nationalist groups and right-wing media, suggesting that white farmers were being killed in a state-sponsored land grab. Ramaphosa took the opportunity at the White House to clarify South Africa's land reform process. It was constitutional, based on public consultation. It was aimed at correcting historic dispossession under apartheid. It did not involve violent land seizures. And there was no government-backed campaign targeting white farmers. In short, Ramaphosa had to do something no Western leader would ever be asked to do: defend his country's right to fix a colonial injustice while assuring the world it wasn't genocide. Now, here's where things got even more tense and frankly, more bizarre. During the meeting, President Trump reportedly referred to or even showed a video clip of South African opposition leader Julius Malema, where Malema spoke about land expropriation and made the infamous "shoot to kill" comment. Now let's be clear, Julius Malema is a radical populist. His rhetoric is fiery, often theatrical, and designed to provoke. The "shoot to kill" comment he made was part of a broader speech about defending black South Africans and confronting what he called economic apartheid. But Trump, or more likely his advisors watching news, took that clip out of context and presented it as evidence of a pending race war on white South Africans. He didn't take the bait. He didn't attack Malema, but he also distanced the South African government from Malema's rhetoric. He clarified that while different voices existed in South Africa's democracy, the state's land reform policy was guided by the Constitution, not militancy or violence. This is how he smartly responded.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, wait. We have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that. Is Natalie here, somebody here to turn that? I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. Whatever you want to do, we can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament.
Honorable. Yes, honorable member.
Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill the mother, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashama and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, no one. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness. Shoot, kill, Yamasa, kill the brewer, the farmer, kill the brewer, the farmer. Pa, pa, pa. Shoot to kill, Yamasa, kill the brewer, the farmer, kill the brewer, the farmer.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, was not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't ever see the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocide on Twitter.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road you have crosses. Death, death, death.
President Trump has made several false claims about violence against white farmers in South Africa in a tense meeting with the country's president. He played this video on a big screen in the Oval Office, saying it showed burial sites for over 1,000 white farmers. But it doesn't show burial sites at all. The crosses, in fact, were part of a protest in 2020 against the murder of 2 white farmers who were shot dead on their farm. Trump also held up a series of articles which he said were evidence of killings. He pointed to this blog post and said it showed white farmers being buried. But the image isn't from South Africa. It's actually from a report about women being buried in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Trump has repeatedly made a discredited claim that there's genocide of white farmers in South Africa. The country has one of the highest murder rates in the world. There were more than 26,000 murders last year, according to police figures. 44 were of people within the farming community, and 8 of those were of farmers. The figures aren't broken down by race, but they clearly don't show a genocide of white farmers as Trump claims. Earlier this year, a South African judge dismissed the idea of genocide in the country as clearly imagined.
All killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. But, okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa, that's where.
We need to find out.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible, the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead.
Ramaphosa didn't just defend South Africa's image, he defended its democratic process. He showed leadership. Even when faced with inflammatory propaganda at the White House, he kept the focus on policy, not panic. Let's be honest, the use of Malema's clip by Trump wasn't just about South Africa. It played into a long-standing Western narrative, the dangerous, angry black radical who wants revenge. Malema became the bogeyman, the excuse to dismiss legitimate land reform as chaos. And Ramaphosa's job in that moment was to say, we are not Julius Malema. We are a constitutional democracy, correcting injustice without tearing the country apart. There's a lesson here for South Africans, for all Africans. When one voice like Malema is used to define an entire nation's agenda, that's not analysis, it's propaganda. And when Trump tried to play judge and jury on South African policy using a YouTube clip, Ramaphosa didn't flinch. That's leadership. Whether you agree with his pace on land reform or not, he chose diplomacy over drama. Please subscribe because you might want to watch this clip again and you won't find it. Let's talk facts. The claims of a white genocide in South Africa have been widely debunked by international organizations, local human rights groups, and police statistics. Here's what the data actually shows. Farm murders affect all races, not just white farmers. The murder rate in South Africa is tragically high across the board, but there's no evidence of a racial extermination campaign. The white genocide narrative was pushed by far-right groups in the US and Australia, and Trump fell for it. This wasn't just irresponsible. It was dangerous. Trump's tweet inflamed racial tensions and threatened to destabilize South Africa's already fragile land reform process. Despite the tension, Ramaphosa remained composed. He presented South Africa not as a crisis zone, but as a country in democratic transition, one that still bore the scars of apartheid, but was trying to heal through justice, not revenge.
And that's a big deal, and it seems like, I want you to look good. I don't want you to look bad.
Very good.
But we have hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to come into our country because they feel they're going to be killed and their land is going to be confiscated. And you do have laws that were passed that gives you the right to confiscate land for no payment. You can take away land for no payment.
I want to clarify that because we have a constitution. Our constitution guarantees and protects the sanctity of tenure of land ownership. And that constitution protects all South Africans with regard to land ownership. However, we do say, because we've got to deal with the past, the government, and as your government also has the right to expropriate land for public use.
And you're doing that.
And we've never really gotten underway with that. And we are going to be doing so.
You're taking people's land away
we have not.
from them. And those people in many cases are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases those people are being executed, and in many cases it's not the government that's doing it, it's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia in a smaller number. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country, and they're white farmers, and they feel that they're going to die in South Africa, and it's a bad thing. Yeah, please.
What can South Africa do? What concessions would you like to see them make to improve relations with the United States? Then I have one more for President Ramaphosa afterwards.
Well, we just spoke about it. I got them a very, very complex machine, 150 of them. I was asked by the president if it could help, and I did that. And I have great feeling for all countries. I deal with all countries, but I have a great feeling for South Africa because I have friends. I have a couple of friends, a few friends here today. I have many friends from South Africa, but many of those friends are not, they can't go back. I have Elon is from South Africa. I don't want to get Elon involved. That's all I have to do, get him into another thing. But Elon happens to be from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. He actually came here on a different subject. sending rockets to Mars, okay?
Yes.
He likes that better. He likes that subject better.
That's right.
But Elon is from South Africa, and I don't want to talk to him about that. I don't think it's fair to him.
That's right.
But I will say that people are fleeing South Africa for their own safety. Their land is being confiscated, and in many cases they're being killed. And that scene of, you see how many crosses they have. Those crosses, that's a dead person in every one of them. And those trucks or cars are paying their respects to all of those dead people on a Sunday morning. That's a rough thing to explain away. And the problem we have, and the way, you know, a correct and a fair media exposes things. But we have a very corrupt media. They won't even report this. If this were the other way around, it would be the biggest story. Now, I will say apartheid, terrible. That was the biggest story. That was reported all the time. This is sort of the opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it. All we know is we're being inundated with people, with white farmers from South Africa. And it's a big problem. Marco Rubio was telling me he's never seen anything like it. The numbers of people that want to leave South Africa because they feel they're going to be dead very soon. Yes, please.
I was going to say,
Brian, go.
If I could just ask you a question. 72% of farmers in your country are white. If they flee, do you feel that maybe the economy could collapse? You may not have a gap to fill in those people that need to replace those farmers.
You know, I'd like my Minister of Agriculture, who is white, who comes from an opposition party to mine, who's joined my government at my invitation to address this very issue, including the question that you've just raised. John?
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah.
And Mr. President, thank you for welcoming us to the White House. I would say we have a rural safety problem in South Africa. I don't think anyone wants to candy coat that. And it requires a lot of effort to get on top of it. It's going to require more policing resources. It's going to require a different strategy to be able to deal with it. But certainly the majority of South Africa's commercial and smallholder farmers really do want to stay in South Africa and make it work. And I've just come from the largest agricultural show in the Southern Hemisphere with organized agriculture and farmers, and the majority of them want to stay. But they too there have a memorial to those who've died as a result of farm attacks. And as the Minister of Agriculture, it is something that I'm particularly exercised with my colleagues at police and my colleagues in the justice cluster to start making farm attacks and stock theft a priority crime. And it affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on smallholder black farmers. I also want to just say this, that the two individuals that are in that video that you've seen are both leaders of opposition minority parties in South Africa. Mkhonto Wesizwe under Mr. Zuma and the economic freedom fighters under Mr. Malema. Now the reason that my party, the Democratic Alliance, which has been an opposition party for over 30 years, chose to join hands with Mr. Ramaphosa's party was precisely to keep those people out of power. We cannot have those people sitting in the union buildings making decisions. And that is why after 30 years of us exchanging barbs across the floor in Parliament and trying to get one over on each other, we've decided to join hands precisely to keep that lot out of government. Because the day they get in to the doors of the union buildings in South Africa or control of our parliament, that's what you're going to see. And that is why this government, working together, needs the support of our allies around the world so that we can strengthen our hand, grow our economy, and shut the door forever on that rabble getting through the doors of the union buildings, because then South Africa's future would be...
So you denounced that type of language in the video that you saw?
Oh yes, we've always done so. As government, as my own party, we are completely opposed to that. We, in 1955, adopted a document which said South Africa belongs to all who live in it.
But why wouldn't you arrest that man? That man said, kill the white farmers, kill the white farmers. And then he danced, and he's dancing, and it's kill the white farmers. I think, I'm not sure, but I think if somebody got up in Parliament and started saying kill a certain group of people, he would be arrested very quickly. That man is going all over South Africa. And that's not a small party. That was a stadium that holds 100,000 people, and I hardly saw an empty seat. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of representation. And those crosses, we have dead white people, dead white farmers, mostly. And you take a look at Australia, they're being inundated, and we're being inundated with people that want to get out. And their farm is valueless, it's valueless, and they just want to get out with their life. And this is a very serious situation. And if we had a real news or real press or media, we don't have that, because they won't talk about this, because they're all guys like that idiot. But if we had a real press, it would be exposed. And you know, the beauty of exposing it is it's like a cleansing action. When it gets exposed, it'll get fixed. That's when it'll get fixed. But people don't talk about it. And I'll tell you who's talking about the thousands of people that are fleeing South Africa right now.
President we discussed USAID, the devastating impact the cuts are having across the African continent.
You know, it's devastating, and hopefully a lot of people are going to start spending a lot of money. And I've talked to other nations. We want them to chip in and spend money too. And we've spent a lot, and it's a tremendous problem going on in many countries. A lot of problems going on. The United States always gets the request for money. Nobody else helps, as you know. Europe doesn't help. Europe hasn't given anything. All they do is sue our companies. You know, they sue Apple, and they sue all of our companies. Apple had to pay $17 billion on a nonsense lawsuit. Very unfair. But we're going to always be there to help.
Afrikaner extravagant rise by South African broadcasting. If this Afrikaner resettlement issue is resolved, we're going to go into a room after this, you guys are going to talk. If it is resolved, what is the potential for the future-looking relationship between the United States?
It's got to be resolved. It should be resolved. I mean, it's a little bit bad when you see a stadium with 100,000 people in it, because that means it's more than just a little movement. It's a pretty big movement in South Africa, so it has to be resolved. It'll be the end of the country if it's not.
But is there potential for the relationship moving forward?
I hope so. That's why I'm here. I mean, I'm not here for my health. I'm here to see what it is. No, I'd like to see. I have friends. I can tell you, Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, they feel so strongly they wanted to be here on behalf of South Africa, not on behalf of me. And, you know, they said, can we be here for this? Because they love the country. Ernie, do you guys want to say a couple of words? I hate to put you in this. This is tougher than sinking a 3-footer. They have, and they've sank many 3-footers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thanks for the honor of being here. We've known each other a long time. We have spoken. You know, we're proud South Africans. I still have my South African passport. You know, we travel with this passport, you know, and I got my visa here. So, you know, but we want to see things get better in our home country. That's the bottom line. It's been 35 years since the transition. President Ramaphosa was right in the middle of the transition time in 1990 and before that. So it's been 35 years of ANC government, and I know there's a lot of anger, you know, through the transition. There was also a lot of stuff happening in the apartheid days. You know, we grew up in the apartheid era, but I don't think two wrongs makes a right. You know, President Mandela, when he came out of prison for all that time, didn't come out with hatred, you know, and really unified our nation through sport. You know, we won the Rugby World Cup in '95.
4 times.
We won the African Nations Cup, soccer. You know, we won some majors as golfers and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, this has been a long time coming. That's why we really wanted to meet you, meet the administration, and see our way forward, because we still want to see our country flourish. You know, we've got some great things going on. business is getting involved with government. Farmers are getting involved in local municipalities, trying to rebuild some of the infrastructure that's been decaying for a long time. So there's a lot of coexistence going on and help from a lot of areas. But I feel we need the US to push this thing through. We've got a great ally we can have, the US. It's always been an ally of South Africa for a very long time. Even in the days of the war, up in Angola, you guys helped us. So very important for us to have your support and get the change we need.
Where did you do that well? He might have done that even better than he plays golf, which is almost impossible. Johan, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, if you had to wind all of those tapes properly, you will see I'm the biggest target of that rabble-rouser. Number one for over 10 years. Mr. Malema. In fact, the first time I met him, he was in the youth league with that gentleman. And look how he's changed.
Right.
We have too many deaths, but it's across the board. It's not only white farmers, it's across the board. And we need technological help. We need Starlink at every little police station. We need drones. I actually got drones donated for the peace parks to stop elephant and rhino poaching. And his predecessor stopped the importation because he said the United States would spy on us. I mean, US SpaceX, the ridicule. So if you can help us. Remember, sir, you and I lived in New York in the 70s. We never thought New York could be what it became. 2 commissioners, a tough mayor. We need your help to stop this awful killing. But it's across the board. Ernie is right now building a house in George. I'm building 3 cottages for my grandchildren on a farm outside Grafrenet. I often go to bed without locking the door. And we have a serious problem with illegal aliens who stream across the border. And if you really look at our statistics, a lot of these murders, firstly it's unemployment and illegal aliens. And then I met Vice President Vance many years ago, the Charlie Rose show. My wife loved the book. And she reminded me this morning that you emphasized the devastation that occurs when big companies leave towns and cities, and there's a culture of dependency that develops. And I remember you discussing it. Now that's our problem. If we don't get our economy to grow, the culture of dependency and the lawlessness will increase. I've again been against apartheid all my life, and I'm their #1 target. Please just Google my name and Malema. You'll see it, sir. He marched on the farm.
But the crime is bad.
The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats. Gangs. We've got gang warfare, like your M33, what were these guys? We've got equivalents there, but we need your help, sir. And we need Elon technology.
Yes, it's important that we become serious, just for once. I've been observing the South African president's state visit to the United States of America, and I just can't keep quiet, man. And I will expand probably in the next video if I'm still interested in expanding on why am I interested and why I can't keep quiet, The first thing that I found remarkable about the whole state visit was that, firstly, the South African delegation was very strategic because it was the Minister of International Relations, it was the Minister of the Presidency, it was the Minister of Agriculture, it was also the Minister of Trade, and the Minister of, I can't remember the fifth minister, but the President of the COSATU was also there. And because they were part of the delegation that was there, we should expect strategic reports, or better yet, developments that shall follow after the meeting, right? Another interesting part is the agenda points that were discussed in the duration of the visit. And one of the most important ones that were discussed was the Starlink, it was the AGOA, it was the G20, because you must remember that President Cyril Ramaphosa is the current chair of the G20, and in November he will be handing over to President Trump. It was the genocide, and lastly it was Julius Malema. There's a lot of other pressing issues that could have been discussed in the meetings, but it became clear that the purpose of the state visit to the United States of America was to make amends with the Americas, right? And also in the form of negotiations, given that America is one of our biggest trade partners as far as the South African economy and the economic spectrum is concerned. So those were very interesting for me as I've been observing the live streams of the meetings. And if you guys are interested in me expanding more on the South African president's state visit in the United States of America, you can just comment and I'll open a playlist and we'll talk about it.
Well, one of the real areas of support is really in investments. We've got to grow our economy, because through growing the economy, we're then able to create more jobs. Because crime really thrives where there is inequality and unemployment. And that is one of the reasons that has brought us here, to improve our investment relations, our trade relations, so that we can preserve the number of jobs that your companies have created in South Africa. By virtue of what we export to you, we are able to create up to 500,000 jobs in the auto industry, in the agricultural industry, and a number of other industries, mining, where we export things to you. And we also know that as South African companies invest here, you are also able to create jobs. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So our main real reason for being here is to foster trade and investment, so that we are able to grow our economy with your support, and so that we are also able to address all these societal problems, because criminality thrives when people are unemployed, when they have no other hope to eke out a living. So that is what we need to resolve, and your support, your partnership with us is what is really going to give us.
Did you guys see this? During the meeting with Trump, Ramaphosa called on his Minister of Agriculture, who took some shots at Julius Malema. Listen.
The two individuals that are in that video that you've seen are both leaders of opposition minority parties in South Africa. The Konto is Sizwe under Mr. Zuma, and the economic freedom fighters under Mr. Malema. Now, the reason that my party, the Democratic Alliance, which has been an opposition party for over 30 years, chose to join hands with Mr. Ramaphosa's party was precisely to keep those people out of power. We cannot have those people sitting in the union buildings making decisions. That is why, after 30 years of us exchanging bombs across the floor in Parliament and trying to get one over on each other, we've decided to join hands precisely to keep that lot out of government, because the day they get in to the doors of the union buildings in South Africa or control of our parliament, that's what you're going to see. And that is why this government, working together, needs the support of our allies around the world, so that we can strengthen our hand, grow our economy, and shut the door forever on that rabble getting through the doors of the Union Bodies.
This minister, he said he'd rather team up with Ramaphosa just so that Malema cannot get power. He even referred to Malema as a rebel. Clearly, this shows that some white South Africans, they are scared of Malema's influence. But what do you guys think? Comment below.
The South African President Ramaphosa visited Trump at the White House in Washington, probably to try to settle the strained relationship between the two countries. During the meeting in the Oval Office, Trump addressed President Ramaphosa with allegations of genocide against the white people in South Africa.
Burial sites, over 1,000 of white farmers.
Ramaphosa was completely shocked to hear that.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President?
Trump supported his allegation by showing him a video of Honorable Julius Malema speaking in Parliament, calling on South Africans to reclaim their land. Ramaphosa was extremely cool. He responded quietly but firmly, emphasizing that the opinions presented in the film do not represent government policy.
Let me clarify that, because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy.
Trump also showed some other proofs which many have confirmed to be fake. DW Africa interviewed one of the leaders of the white farmers in South Africa about the claim.
We do not have a genocide in South Africa.
Nevertheless, it appears that the Honorable Malema is not particularly concerned with the statement made by President Trump.
There are no Afrikaners who have been killed here in South Africa.
He said that Ramaphosa could go ahead and explain here and there, but that no one in South Africa will listen to him.
Ramaphosa can go and explain all those things there. No one will listen to him.
Malema became the bogeyman, the excuse to dismiss legitimate land reform as chaos. And Ramaphosa's job in that moment was to say, "We are not Julius Malema. We are a constitutional democracy, correcting injustice without tearing the country apart." There's a lesson here for South Africans, for all Africans. When one voice like Malema is used to define an entire nation's agenda, that's not analysis, it's propaganda. And when Trump tried to play judge and jury on South African policy using a YouTube clip, Ramaphosa didn't flinch. That's leadership. Whether you agree with his pace on land reform or not, he chose diplomacy over drama. Please subscribe because you might want to watch this clip again and you won't find it. Let's talk facts. The claims of a white genocide in South Africa have been widely debunked by international organizations, local human rights groups, and police statistics. Here's what the data actually shows. Farm murders affect all races, not just white farmers. The murder rate in South Africa is tragically high across the board, but there's no evidence of a racial extermination campaign. The white genocide narrative was pushed by far-right groups in the US and Australia, and Trump fell for it. This wasn't just irresponsible. It was dangerous. Trump's tweet inflamed racial tensions and threatened to destabilize South Africa's already fragile land reform process. Despite the tension, Ramaphosa remained composed. He presented South Africa not as a crisis zone, but as a country in democratic transition, one that still bore the scars of apartheid, but was trying to heal through justice, not revenge. He positioned land reform as part of South Africa's unfinished liberation, a necessary step to true economic freedom. And he urged the US to engage constructively, not react emotionally. This meeting symbolized two very different worldviews. On one side, you had Ramaphosa, a leader trying to correct historical injustice through law. On the other, Trump, a president quick to amplify conspiracy theories without understanding context. Ramaphosa didn't come to beg. He came to reset a relationship. To remind the US that Africa is not just a battlefield of white fear and Western intervention, but a continent demanding respect, investment, and partnership. The irony? The same Americans crying genocide in South Africa were silent about actual state violence in the US, from Ferguson to Flint. That's the hypocrisy of selective outrage. Ramaphosa's visit to Trump's White House was more than a diplomatic event. It was a confrontation between truth and propaganda, between history and distortion. As Africans, we must own our narratives. Land reform is not genocide. Economic justice is not racial hatred. And global partnerships must be built on truth, not fear.